What's up, everybody? This is Charlie from Charisma on Command, and welcome to the course on leadership. Now, before I get any further into this, I have to say, leadership is a massive, huge, almost insurmountable topic, right? And we've already covered parts of it: how to lead in conversation, how to lead yourself emotionally so that you feel a certain way and can feel more confident in a moment. So there's bits that we've touched on. There's bits that are just so big that we're not going to be able to get into. But what I really want to focus on today is what I see as the core kernel of leadership. And this is true of all leaders, no matter what they do, whether it's in business or in a group of friends. And it, as I see it, is this. There's a group of people, or maybe even just a single person, who is feeling one way and acting one way. And what a leader does is, through their inspiration, motivation, actions, behavior, example, they get them to act a different way and feel a different way. That is what leadership is at its core. And when you multiply that by a lot of people, you have a movement. So what I want to talk to today is specifically the psychology really behind influence, or persuasion, or motivation, or inspiration. You can really take your word here because it's all under the same umbrella. And we're going to talk about more on how to tell stories that really motivate people to move and act. We're going to talk about the different psychological profiles that people have. And this is one that was huge for me in seeing that not everybody is persuaded the same way. And when you can quickly identify, oh, this is this type of person, they're going to respond to this type of persuasion, this type of motivation, it becomes like almost a cheat code to see, wow, this is how people work, this is how they motivate, this is what drives them, and you can so much more quickly get to influencing them. That's something that I use heavily in my coaching calls. So these are the big topics that I want to cover today, and that's what we're going to be touching on. So let's just get right into it, moving first to a little bit more on stories and how stories can inspire people to act. Have you ever seen the movie Glengarry Glen Ross? And if you haven't, don't sweat it. I'm going to put a link to the bottom. But there's this awesome scene in it, and it's Alec Baldwin's only role in the entire movie. And he comes in and he just kicks the crap out of these salesmen. Not literally, but figuratively. He gets in their face, he yells at them, he fires them up to go out there and be better salesmen, depending on your point of view. Some people think he's just a jerk. But there's this iconic moment where he flips over the chalkboard that he has behind him, and he points at two acronyms, which are very famous. The first one, ABC, always be closing, right? He wants his guys to be selling all the time. And then the second one is less recognizable to people outside of the sales world. You might have seen it and then just not remembered it, but it goes like this. AIDA, attention, interest, decision, action. And I think this one is even more important because for someone, yeah, I want to sell. How do I sell? I want to motivate people. How do I do it? This is the framework. This is how you go about doing it. And if you think back to the story part of Charisma University, you might be wondering, wait a second, I got a framework for stories, I got a framework for motivating, like how am I supposed to keep all this straight? Well, the good news is this is the framework for stories, just with a tiny little switch at the end that gets people actually to move. And I want to run through exactly how they correspond. So first part, attention, right? That is the opening hook of a story. You've got to get people's attention, whether it's with body language or telling them that they need to listen up or giving them a good reason. Interest. This is the rising action of the story, right? You have to earn their continued attention. You can crack jokes, you can go about it in any number of ways, you can talk about things that are pertinent to them, but you need to continue to hook their interest and build a bit of tension. The third part, decision. I think of it as decision/desire. That corresponds with the climax. And in a story, the climax is that emotional high point, right? It's where the laugh comes, where you pull on somebody's heartstrings, it's where that moment of shock is. In a story or a presentation where you're trying to motivate people, the moment of decision is where you take really the climax of whatever story you're telling, but you have to flip it back on them. So just to give a quick hypothetical, say that you're talking about, or you're telling a tale of somebody who, really struggled to lose weight, did all this stuff and was able to do it. And this climactic moment is when they see, their ex, and their ex cannot believe how great a shape they're in. The ex wants to get back, and they say no because they have this new sense of self-esteem. This is coming out of the top of my head. That's going to be the climactic moment, but what you need to do when you're trying to motivate people is really drive home and flip it back to them. Make this a moment of decision for them. So you might say things like, imagine how that feels. Like, would you want that to be you, or do you want to be the type of person that never experiences that? You force a decision in that moment, in that emotional high point when you've got them primed. And then the last part is action. This is the resolution. Now, in stories, it's where you sort of have the moral. Honestly, if it's funny, you can just drop off because, hey, there is no moral. We're just trying to have fun. When you're trying to motivate people, this is the part that is the most critical. People forget it, right? I've seen people do wonderfully. They have these really inspirational tales. They get up there. People are fired up, motivated. They go, all right, like, welcome aboard. We're going to do this together. It's been nice seeing you. Hasta luego. And they're out. And eventually, all of that motivation that they build up in their audience fizzles and nothing changes. So this action part, this is where you give people a concrete step right then that they can do to ensure, or at least put them on the trajectory to continue down this path. So if it's this weightlifting example, it might be, all right, put on your calendar right now, call the personal trainer, sign up for a session on Monday. You're going to commit yourself to the future. Something that I have to do when I'm coaching clients is right there, I need to get them to commit to changing a behavior in the future. And since they're on the phone with me, I can't always have them do it, but what I'll say is, all right, when is the next time you're likely to feel, insecure, nervous, whatever, where you want to clam up? And they'll say, at work during this meeting. I say, okay, prepare for this mentally, and I want you to set a calendar reminder or a phone reminder, whatever works best for you. But when you walk into that room, make sure I want you to be thinking open body, a lot of stuff that we've talked about. I give them a concrete action, and that's what you have to do as well if you ultimately want to not just motivate people, but have them follow through and see things change. So right now, I want to go to a great example of a story that uses this formula over and over again in the small parts and then over the aggregate of the story. It's Tony Robbins. He is a master influencer, like one of the best I've ever seen. So let's get into that now.
So this is easily going to be the longest video that I've ever done in one of these clips. It's coming in at about 14 minutes, but it's really good, so I'm going to let it roll. Couple things, again, to keep in mind as we go through it. First, the AIDA formula. I'll call it out as Tony hits on each of the points, but it's done really, really well. Second, how he uses his body, right? He gets it in there phenomenally. And then the emotions that Tony brings into this are incredibly, incredibly powerful. There's such a roller coaster ride. So let's just watch this video, and I'll try to stop it as sparingly as possible.
My life is shaped by a lot of events, but one of the most powerful was somebody doing these kind acts for my family. When I was 11 years old, we had a really, really tough Thanksgiving where there was no money and no food, and we wouldn't have starved. We always found a way to get something. But we weren't going to have a Thanksgiving dinner, that's for sure, certainly not a feast of any sort. And my mom and dad at the time were fighting like cats and dogs and saying things that once you say them, you can never take them back. You know the kind of stuff I'm talking about?
So just want to highlight this. He starts with the drama of this thing, like running out of food on Thanksgiving. That is enough to grab attention. Plus that he's on stage and he has this. So he's setting up a scene that is just rife with tension. At this point, he says, do you know what I'm talking about? This signifies that we've moved into the interest phase. Now he's going to start developing characters, creating drama, telling stories. So that first bit is just, grabs your attention. He's got it because he's on stage. And then sort of he's a loud guy. He lowers his voice and tells you the serious story. That captures attention, and now we move into interest.
And my mom was screaming at father about how he couldn't even take care of his own family, and it was horrible. And I have a younger brother and younger sister. I'm the oldest. So I was trying to keep them from hearing this conversation, and then a miracle happened. Bang on the door.
That is great tension building. Miracle happened. You're questioning what is the miracle, and watch how long you wait to see what it is.
I'm the oldest. They're screaming, so I go answer the door. And I answer the door, and standing there is this giant man. I was this little boy. And he's holding this huge box of food. And beside him on the ground was a black pot with an uncooked turkey in it. And he said, is your father home? And I said, just one moment. I was like unbelievably euphoric. I thought, this is a gift from God. This is going to change it all. This is going to make my mom and dad happy. It's going to be unbelievable. So I go home. My father is screaming.
Watch the emotions here, right? So he's got the one hand that he's really excited. The other hand, there's this fight going on. Watch him play these out.
My mother through a closed door to the bedroom door. And I said, Dad, there's a guy at the door. And he goes, you answer the door. I said, I did. He's got to see you. So I kind of teased. I said, Dad, you got to come. So he said, fine. He made one last yell at her, and he walks to the door. And I'm waiting there, just waiting to see his face. And my dad opens the door, and this man's standing there with this big box of food. And my father did not get happy. He looked at this man, and he raised his voice to him, and he said, "Look, we don't take charity." And then he took the door to slam it in the man's face. But the man was a good-sized man. He put his foot there and smacked his foot and bounced back over. He said, sir, this is not charity. Somebody knows you're having a tough time, and they want you to have a magical Thanksgiving. I'm just the delivery guy. He said, "Please take this." And my father said, "We don't take charity." He went to slam it again, and this time the guy put his shoulder against it so he couldn't do it. And then my father's staring at him. It's like these two males starting to get in this intense mode, and one's just trying to give a gift, and I'm freaking. And then the guy said something that I'll never forget, and in moments I wish he hadn't said, but he found a way to force my father. He's holding this thing, and he looked at me, and then he looked at my dad, and he said, "Don't make your family suffer because of your ego."
So I want to pause right there. I didn't want to do it before. When Tony says he said something that I'll never forget, he doesn't immediately launch into what he said. He builds it, right? He allows that space to expand, and this is something that we're going to work on. Blowing up the moments where you have people on the edge of their seat, right? So he lets that sit for 5 to 10 seconds before he reveals, and then the scene continues to unfold.
Now my dad's level of energy increased, but he was also trapped. You get it? So he took the food, slammed it on our table, and slammed the door in the man's face and never even thanked him. And I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me was crushed. And I watched my father storm off and went on back to scream at my mother. And I remember that day just thinking, I don't understand. And years later, I began to understand it a little bit. What I began to understand is that you look at a person's life, and it's like so much in life you could be joyous about. Like I wanted to smile, you know what I mean? Even now I can remember it. I wanted to smile about this great gift, but now I couldn't even smile because it would make him angry. And then I thought, years I figured out, our whole life is shaped by decisions. That's what we've talked about today, right? But there's 3 decisions you're making every moment you're alive. And the way you make these 3 decisions shapes your destiny. First decision we're all making every moment is, what are you going to focus on? What are you going to focus on? And, I realized that my father's life and my life ended up very different because we made that day 3 decisions very differently. He decided to focus on the fact that he has not fed his family. And the second question you got to decide, every moment you're alive, and including this moment, what are you going to focus on? The second question is, as you're focusing on, what does this mean? What does it mean? And the bottom line on meaning is, if you think about it, you get to make up the meaning, and most people pick the worst one, don't they? That day, my father decided to focus on the fact he hadn't fed his family, and I know what meaning he gave because he said it out loud over and over again, that he was worthless because he had not taken care of his family. And then the final, most important decision you make every moment you're alive. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I'll tell you what he decided to do. He decided to leave our family shortly thereafter, which at the time was the worst experience of my life. It was the most crushing experience I felt. It's been so many years now, I don't have the same feelings. And part of it is 3 years ago he passed away. But at the time, I knew no greater pain. My family knew no greater pain. I couldn't understand why he would leave. I loved him so much. And my life turned...
Just want to call out how Tony embodies these emotions, right? He doesn't sit here and cry, but you can see him biting his lip, taking time to speak about this, this sad thing. Obviously, he's not about to break down, but he does go there, and he begins to feel some of those feelings. That is what draws people in.
Very different than him. I was the only one to go at his funeral. No one else in the family would go. Nobody wanted to be part of it. He died alone of a disease called connective tissue disorder. And I can tell you, right before his death, he got the lesson because he looked at me and he said, "Son," he said, "I was a bastard. I didn't connect with anybody, and look what I'm dying of." It's unbelievable. So that same day, I made 3 different decisions. I decided to focus on the fact there was food. What a concept. I like that. But what changed my life was the meaning I gave it. I decided that day that what this means is that strangers care. And if strangers care about me and my family, I decided what I was going to do is I was going to care about strangers. And that completely changed my life. I promised myself someday I'd do well enough to do this for other families like was done for me. And I didn't wait till I was, wealthy to do it. I did my first one when I was 17. I remembered I was 17. I had my own car. I had some money. And I decided to go on the greatest shopping spree of my life at that point. I decided I was going to go shop for 2 families for Thanksgiving, and I was going to go do for families what was done for me so many years before. It was the most euphoric experience. I took 2 baskets. I went to the manager of the place. And I told him.
Sets it up. He says, this is the most euphoric experience. And you're questioning what is the experience. Now he tells you because he's got you hooked.
What I was going to do, and I said, I want you to give me a discount. You be my partner. Give me 10%, cheap bastard. Right?
Injecting humor throughout. He's done that 2 or 3 times at this point. Keeps things a little bit light. Keeps people interested.
But it was so cool. I got 2 of everything, right? Because I wanted to get enough food for a family for 2 or 3 days and have an unbelievable feast. Then I called this church in the Barrio area, and I said, listen, I want to go take care of some families that are too proud to come to the church and get food. So they might suffer. Can you recommend some families? And they gave me 2 families. So then I wrote a note because I thought, you know what? I'm going to put on old jeans and a T-shirt, and I'm going to deliver this. I'm not going to get the acknowledgement, but I do want to see their faces, right? So I'll go as the delivery boy, which is easy. I look like one. But I wrote this note, and I don't want him to get upset like my father did. So I wrote this note, and I said, this is a gift from a friend. Please know that you're loved. I want you to have an extraordinary Thanksgiving. You deserve it. Please accept this gift. And then I put under it, I said, if you can, someday do well enough to do this for one other family and pass on the gift. And I put love a friend. And then I realized I was going to an area that was more Latino, and I don't speak Spanish, so I thought I got a friend to write on the back in Spanish so I could flip it around if there was a challenge. So I got one of my buddy's old vans because I need a little room, put all the groceries in, and I drove to this house. And it was not what I expected. It was more. I got to this house, and I got 2 bags of groceries, and I banged on the door. Door opened, and this woman about this tall, right, stares up at me like this, right? And I said, hi. And it was very obvious she didn't speak any English, and she let out a scream when she saw the food. And by the way, this woman had 5 children and a husband. What I didn't know is the husband had left her 3 days before with no money, no food, and 5 kids. So I got these bags. So she screamed, and she grabbed me and started pulling my neck and like kissing me, right? And I said, no. I said, I'm the delivery boy. And she didn't understand a word I was saying. So I reached in my pocket and I gave her the note, flipped it over. She read it in Spanish, and then she started to bawl. So then she came and started kissing me again. I said, no, I'm the delivery boy. I'm, trying to show her. And she goes, no, gift from God. I said, I'm trying not to bawl. So I'm like, where do I put this? And I'm doing everything. I hold it together, like smiling, but I want to cry. And she just pointed. It wasn't a big house. It's like a room. So I went over and I put the stuff on there. And just as I'm trying to put stuff on there, I hear these screams. And all of a sudden, bam, bam. 2 boys hit me, one leg, then the other. These 2 little guys just tackle me, right? When they saw the food, they went crazy. When I saw the pumpkin pie, it was over. So I said, come out with me. And so they came out, and we kept bringing these groceries in. And I'm telling you, it was like, I don't know how to describe it. It was the most euphoric, fun, passionate, loving. It was like they're my little brothers, And so we brought all the stuff in, and they were laughing, and they were lit up. And then, I'd done it all, and it was time to go, and I didn't want to go, and they didn't want me to go. This one little boy just wouldn't let go of my leg, and he just kept looking up to me and hugging me, and I was like, but I had to go make the other delivery. So I turned to this woman, I said, I've got to go, And she said, okay, whatever her language was. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it meant okay, right? So I went to go leave, and then she grabbed my arm, and she started to have tears in her eyes. And I said, I wanted to say, Happy Thanksgiving, but I didn't know Spanish, so I went, Feliz Navidad. Figured it was close, And she started she went from crying to laughing, right? And then she grabbed me, gave me this big hug, and the kids gave me these hugs. And I remember I got out and I walked off, and they were all standing on the porch. And I got in this little van, and I drove it out and I turned it around. And as I went to turn it around, I looked in the rearview mirror, and I was feeling all this emotion building in my body. And I looked in the mirror, and I saw Mama standing in the porch with her kids, all the kids smiling. Mom was sitting there crying hysterically and smiling from ear to ear. And I couldn't keep it together. I was right there, stopped in the street, and I started bawling uncontrollably. And I remember just thinking, this is a beautiful thing. Why is this making me cry? And, why is this great thing? Why am I so emotional about this? And then I got it. I realized in that moment that the worst day of my life, my father leaving, had actually been the best day of my life. Because if I hadn't had that experience, I wouldn't be here today. And now because of that, I get to live this life. And I have the desire and the drive and the want to give in this way. And so I've really realized that the worst day was the best day, that was God's gift. The gift wouldn't have been there if he would have stayed. There's an old country song that says, "Thank God for unanswered prayers." It's a story about this man who wants his prayer and finds out later on it wasn't fulfilled, right?
So I just want to pause. I wanted to let that run. But towards the end of that story, if you felt yourself thinking like, wow, that'd be an amazing thing to do, that's a good sign that he got into the higher part of the story, right? So he starts it off, he grabs your attention. There's actually multiple stories in this. But builds interest, tells you the story, full of drama, right? So much emotion there being worn on his face and in his body and in the story itself. And then he gets into the part where he starts to make you want something, right? You start to want the lesson of the story. You start to want to potentially go and do something like this. So now he's wrapping it up, and you'll see it towards the very end. He points it back to everyone else, right? Really builds that desire and then calls for an action.
So I tell you the story for a couple reasons. One is, if you want to change your life, figure out how your worst day was your best day. It'll change everything, because it is if you look for it. If you find the deeper meaning, it is. There's something in you that wouldn't be there without it. And the second reason is because I want to recruit your soul. Not for your money or business. I want to recruit you in this action of going and making a difference. I want to recruit you for you, because I know if you go do a few of these things, you'll get hooked and you'll make it a ritual and it'll change your life. Whatever things you do in your life, this is what it's really about. And, it won't be long before it'll be Thanksgiving here, and we still do this. I start out the first year, I fed 2 families, and the next year I fed 4. I'm going to double it. Next year I did 8, which was a lot of work. And I didn't tell anybody what I was doing, because I wasn't doing it for acknowledgement. I was doing it because it was right. But after a while, I thought I could use some help. So I got my friends together and said, you know what? Instead of just going and having turkey, let's give thanks. Let's go build baskets with food and great stuff, and let's deliver it to people. Then we'll come in and have a big dinner, and we'll talk about what we're grateful for and have our dinner. And so we did it, and it became a ritual, and it grew. And then I built some companies, and all my employees got involved. And then about 14, 15 years ago, I started my foundation. And last year, we fed over 1 million people now in 9 countries around the world, on Christmas and Thanksgiving. It's been a pretty amazing experience, right? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I thank you for your applause. I wasn't telling you for that reason. I want to recruit you. And you can give your money, but I'd much prefer if you would just go deliver the food. Because I'll tell you what's great. You'll be changed by that. It's easy to give money. But when you enter an environment and you give, you don't give as the giver. You go as the delivery person, but you're really the one that made it. It'll absolutely change your life.
So there you go. That is the final call for action, right? He wants people to go and do this. And you can imagine if he just gotten on stage and said something to the effect of, okay, I want everyone here to go donate food or participate in some philanthropic event because it's really good for you and you'll be happy, probably would not have moved many people. But every time Tony does this in front of a group of people, he gets new people to join his foundation. So that is why storytelling is so critical and why following this formula, AIDA, attention, interest, desire, action, is so critical as well. The next biggest thing, and potentially the biggest thing with stories, is injecting emotion. right? He's happy, he's sad, he's depressed, he's uplifted, he's crying. All of that stuff sucks you in even more. Something else that he does, he expands on those moments when he really is building tension. So he'll say something like, it was a miracle, and I opened the door, and standing there is this guy. He's massive. And he doesn't tell you what the miracle is. He just continues to build the scene. That keeps you very, very hooked. So just wanted to show you this video. It's very, very powerful for all of those reasons. And I think it's got a fantastic message.
All right, here we go. Pulling people into your world. I really like this part because it has everything to do with pace and energy, right? Pulling people into your world is a matter of making them follow you on an emotional journey to where you are going. So this is why the pace and the energy of what you're saying is so critical. Now, what I want to emphasize is that it actually doesn't matter what pace and what energy you choose. You can go slower or faster. The thing is, you first need to capture attention, as we discussed. So typically speaking, you need to enter into a conversation or a room at a higher energy than the people around you. I don't mean this in any sort of mystical way. What I mean is higher energy typically speaks louder, has these big gesticulations, and is the person that you are aware of in a room, right? There's this common myth that you can go in as a brooder, because people have seen Marlon Brando films or something like this, and they watch his character come in and he has this quiet intensity that just draws people to him. What they neglect to realize is that he is on a big screen that everyone is watching, and everything he's doing is scripted. If your attention was not forcefully directed to that quiet intensity, say you just were out in a room, right, and say that Marlon Brando wasn't ridiculously good looking back in the day, you probably wouldn't notice that. So while you can certainly slow the energy down as conversation develops, you tend to need to capture attention with a higher energy, right? So what I want to talk about now is how do you pull people into your sort of level? Like, how do you pull people into your world specifically with regards to energy? Because there's two kinds. I am going to now demonstrate the one that is less my style, and this is a slower, lower energy and pace. The big thing with a low energy is that it's not actually quieter. What it is more staccato, if you will. It is more fractured by these sorts of pregnant pauses. And what the pauses do is they enable people to sort of sit on the edge of their seats. They feel sucked in by the vacuum of emptiness that you've left when there's not words there. What is critical, though, to make people know that you are not done speaking is that your eye contact needs to be very, very focused. Fantastic example is a Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton talks to people. He often gets very close, and he's a slower speaker. He doesn't rush what he says. He has these pauses in between his thoughts. There's not ums and uhs. That's an absolute killer, particularly for the slower energy level. But what he does is he lets people know when he's done with them by where he directs his eye contact. So when he's done with someone, he'll nod at them and start to meander off. They know that each pause contains something behind it because his eye contact does not break. So important. So if you're going to take someone into a slower, lower energy, which is a great skill if you want to develop a more, what is the word? I guess intimate. I've sort of been using that a lot, but it's a more intimate connection with someone. If you want to slow down the energy, this is a great way to develop an intimate connection. Also, very, very good for storytelling. It gets people on the edge of their seats as they wonder what comes next. Not my preferred mode, but certainly one you can do. Last thing, gesticulations with the slower energy tend to match the speaking. If you go back and you watch me, the pauses are not just pauses in what I'm saying. there are pauses in how I move as well. That all contributes to this sense of, tell me more, tell me more. So that's the slower energy. I've tried my best to convey it. You can do this to build intimacy with people once you've captured their attention. You can do it to develop stories. The most important things are that you do not speak super quietly, at least at the get-go. It's a very, very advanced skill to be able to speak quietly and hold a group of people spellbound. Certainly something that you can do once you develop your storytelling skills. That actually is a fantastic tool, but at first, be careful because you might lose people, especially if you're in a room that has distractions. Now, for me, what is the much more comfortable mode of interaction I would call a higher energy. This is so important for interactions with multiple people often, right? Because what you need to do is capture the attention of everybody. And if you're slowly speaking to one person and just zoned in on them, it can be difficult to make all of the other conversations come to you. Now, the advantage of a faster interaction is that you don't actually have to make sustained eye contact with everybody, because the speed at which you're speaking and the passion behind your words communicates that you're not done talking, right? If I go to this slower mode and look away from you, you figure I'm done speaking. But as long as I'm going with this higher energy, you know what is there. Same sort of thing with gesticulations. They are wide. They tend to match when I speak, but there's obviously so much more words coming out that the words can oftentimes eclipse what I'm saying. Stays loud, very energetic, and equally important here, I don't want to overemphasize this, is the varying of tonality. It goes up and it can come down. All of that is going to help capture attention in the higher mode. So with both of these, I gave you a little bit of playbook on how to use each of them. The critical thing here is that you lead people to these different modes. You're going to have to come in higher to take them there, but if you can then move to one mode and to another, you have established yourself as the person who sets the tone of energy for the interaction. This is the definition of a magnetic personality. Now, you've captured attention, you've taken it somewhere, you have sucked people into your world. This is how it's done. So that first part with AIDA, that is really a general framework for motivating just about anybody, right? It's not particular to this type of person or this type of person. It's general to people. What I want to shift to now is a way of profiling, understanding people that is going to enable you to tailor what you say and what you do to them specifically, so that you know, okay, this person is going to respond to this type of communication and this person is going to respond to this completely different type. And when you have this framework, it is like having the source code to I mean, it's just amazing. I don't even know if that's the right metaphor, but it is almost like seeing the matrix when it comes to persuading people. And I have to tell you, this is so much of what I do on my client calls. People think that when they do this, they're like, oh, no, what do you mean? Like, you're not persuading me. You're giving me information. You're like helping me with strategy. And that is the beauty of what I'm about to teach you, is that it is not invasive. In fact, what it feels like when somebody is doing this to you, or you're being on the receiving end of it, is that you're just realizing things about yourself. Because really what you're going to do, and what I'm going to teach you to do, is to take motivations that people already have, right? They're motivated to do something, whether they're motivated to eat, motivated to watch TV, motivated to care about success. Something is driving them. And what it helps you do is just take that drive and attach it to something that's going to be more beneficial from them. So if they're watching TV, you can take the motivation that maybe they care about in some other aspect of their life and quickly just switch, okay, we're not going to tie that to TV. We're going to tie that to building your business, and watch them just sort of take off. That's what's incredible about it, is that people are not necessarily going to feel like, oh, like he did this to me, he influenced me this way. It feels like an internal shift because it is. And the last thing that I'll say about this is that a lot of what I'm going to cover is stuff that I've learned from reading books, videos, audio things, and I'm actually going to go to a live seminar from Tony Robbins. Caveat here, I thought that he was absolutely a quack when I first came across him, right? I'd seen him in Shallow Hal. I'd seen him on Oprah. He just seemed like somebody from my mother. And I do not know what compelled me to read his book, but I did, and I'm glad. Because say whatever you want to about how crazy his people are who support him, his stuff absolutely works. So what I'm going to teach you is what he covers sometimes in like 50-hour weekend seminars or 8-hour DVD sets. And I'm going to consolidate it necessarily so it fits in here. If you want any of the original resources, I highly recommend them. I will put up links. I think they're great. They've changed my life. But for now, let's just get started in it, because I'm going to give you pieces of it, not pieces, the entire framework, which will be the 80-20 to how to make it work in your life. So we're going to start now with how to understand, how to perceive different types of needs in people and figure out what is going to motivate this person versus what is going to motivate someone else. So the first part here is going to be genuinely understanding what drives people. And there's a multitude of things that drive people. We all seem so different. But if you go down to it and you use a helpful framework, there's really only 6 things that you need to be on the lookout for. Because when you can identify which of these 6 things are the primary drivers of somebody's action, you can get them to change. And we're going to go into how. But just trust me, right? Be looking for these things in yourself and in other people. So I want to run through what they are, and then we'll go into examples of how they can help you get other people to change. Top need. First one is for certainty and comfort, right? This is the need it's for stability. It's the need that we feel. Maybe you've been really tight financially, and you're just like, holy cow, like, I need to make some money today. Maybe you've been plenty fine financially. We're thinking about leaving your job, but we're nervous about it just because you didn't know what would come after. That is that need for uncertainty, for certainty expressing itself. People want to know to varying degrees. I'll say I have this fairly low, my mother has this incredibly high. They want to know that the future is predictable, stable, and safe, and they want to know that they will be comfortable. So this is one need that drives a lot of action, The second need that people have, perhaps humorously, are variety. Yes, they want things to be stable, but they also want to know that life will change, it will be exciting, will bring new things, right? This is why people don't want to watch the same movies all the time. This is why some people jump out of airplanes. This is why some people come home, and even though the day is wonderful, they get mad at their spouse to create a fight, cause some drama, and just shift things up a little bit. Because they have this desire for variety in their life, and it's going to express itself somehow, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively. The third need is for significance. This is another big one along with certainty. Significance, right? You can think of it as the desire to feel important, the desire to feel special, the desire to feel unique. This is the need of people that seem to plaster their names everywhere. And it can be a public need, right? Like the guy who donates $100 million to have a wing of the college named after him. Or it can be a private need, right? It can be somebody who just donates charitably, but it makes them feel good and special. Like, you know what? Not a lot of people would do that. That makes me feel good. That need to be significant is huge in our society. I don't know if it's always been throughout history, but I got to tell you, this is one of the most common ones that I see in my clients and friends and other people. So be on the lookout for it. It's going to hit you in the head. The fourth need is the need for love and connection. Now, I mean, we can all relate to this, right? You need, if you spend too much time without family or friends or a romantic partner, like you start to feel lonely and crappy, and other things can be going really well. People might think highly of you from a distance, but if you don't have that connection, that commune with other people, you're going to feel it. And there's a number of ways that people deal with this that aren't so healthy. So there's, on the extreme end, there are instances of people feigning sickness or getting even really sick without realizing it because it gets them pity. It gets other people to come out and say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. On the less extreme end, this is what people do when you say, how's work? And they go, oh my God, it's so hard, man. Like, I can't do it. I can't take it. They're trying to elicit some sort of pity so that you will connect with them, so that you'll commiserate with them. And sometimes they don't even do it to you. They do it to themselves. They just feel, oh, my life is so hard, poor me. That enables them to self-soothe and connect with themselves. Now, obviously, there's a lot of positive ways this can do, right? This can express itself by going out and making friends, by getting in a relationship, by being good to your family, right? There's tons of positive expressions, as there are with all of the needs. The question is, how are people driven to fulfill each of those needs? Some people get certainty by making a lot of money. Some people get it by eating because they know that'll give them comfort, right? you want to be identifying not just what needs drive, how do they go about fulfilling it? Do they get variety from moving to a different city every 10 months like I do? Or do they get variety by starting fights with strangers in bars when they're drunk? So this is what you're looking for. These are the first 4 needs. Guaranteed, people will find a way on some level, even if it's at a low level, to hit these needs. Now, there are 2 more. And these are needs that are not guaranteed to be pursued, fulfilled, or hit in any way. But if you don't do it, no matter how good you have the first 4, if you don't do the final 2, you're not going to feel fulfilled. It's just, sorry, them's the breaks of being a human being. Here's what the needs are. The 5th need is to grow in some way. Right? And this can just be meditating in the morning. This can be writing a book. This can be pushing yourself athletically. This can be pushing yourself musically. But when people don't feel like they're making progress, they tend to shut down. Even if other things statically are really good, if they don't feel like they're moving forward in some aspect of their lives, whether it's their business, right? There are millionaires out there that haven't started a business and feel crappy about their business life, or they haven't started a business in a while. Growth, hugely important, though not always pursued. And then 6th, honestly, this is sadly the least pursued need, but the one that leads to the most fulfillment, happiness, and connection is the need to contribute, right? A lot of people aren't going to go after this, but this is the one that gives the best sense of well-being when you're volunteering or giving back to a community in some way, or even when it's just one person, right? Love is a little bit more intimate connection with friends, but contribution just for the sake of spreading joy, of spreading wealth, of spreading the things that you've learned, that makes people feel fulfilled. And I will tell you, I can definitely vouch for this, because the moments when I feel best are not necessarily when I sell a bunch of books or, we get a ton of money for the business. It's when I get emails from people that are like, you've changed my life in a positive way. That is what lights me up the most. Yet for some reason, people are not compelled to pursue this. So you're not always going to see this in the people that you're talking to, but it's one to be aware of. So now these are the 6 needs. I want to go through first how you identify these, and then second, how you can help someone who seems to be stuck in a certain pattern of behavior shift to another pattern of behavior by knowing how to subtly play with the needs in the background. So that's what I'm going to go to in the next video. I know this is a lot I've dumped on you. If you need to, take a pause, take a breather, identify in yourself and your friends what you think the primary needs that drive them. Everyone's going to have the full spectrum, but you're looking for 1 or 2 that really drive most of your actions and your identity. And I will give you a hint. Those aren't always the same, right? What drives what you do and what drives the way you'd like to see yourself, unfortunately, those don't always correspond. So if you want to take a minute, think about that. And if you're ready, I will go straight away into how to shift people's behavior by helping them with their needs.
Vamos caminando.
Aquí.
No, caminando.
Aquí.
Caminando.
Aquí.
No.
Aquí.
No.
Sí.
No.
Sí.
Sí.
No.
No, vamos.
So that seems really silly, but that's what breaking a pattern is. And I hate to break it to you, but adults are the same way. Right? Sometimes we just fall into these patterns of habitual denying something or not wanting to do this or getting stuck in a certain way. And there is no way you can persuade someone until you break them out of that just gut reaction to resist. Right? So this is what breaking patterns is all about. People get into a certain mode, and before you can get them to a new mode, you need to break the pattern of the old mode. So I'll give you an example from my own life really quick. When I was back working at a corporation, as a consultant, there was this one day, and I took a long weekend. I'd asked in advance if I could go out to Montauk during the day. And I said, listen, the bus that I'm taking is going to have Wi-Fi. I have a call in the morning. I'll be able to take it then, and then I'll take the afternoon off when I get there. They said, okay, no, sure, right? Go ahead and do it. And I get on the bus, I sit down, and the Wi-Fi is terrible. And I get on the phone, and it just cuts out every 5 minutes, right? And I'm on this conference call, I'm dialing it back in. Like, people are not happy about it because I'm just constantly in and out. So, as I suspected, on Monday morning, I had a call from my direct superior, and I pick it up, right, first thing in the morning. He goes, so I heard you shit the bed on Friday. And I'm expecting it, but it's still just like, oh, damn, I'm in trouble. And he starts, going into it about how I should not have done this, should not have done this. And I think what a lot of people do here is they say, well, listen, I'd asked previously, like I did. And I knew better than that at this point, right? I was knees deep in this sort of psychology stuff. So what I said was, you're absolutely right. It was dumb. I shouldn't have done it. Everything you said is correct, and it won't happen again. And I'm sorry. And I remember there was like a reset silence on the end of the phone. He went, well, don't beat yourself up too bad, man. It's not that big a deal. And he went from really just pushing, like, you screwed up, to like, listen, man, it's not that big of a deal. Honestly, I'm going to cover for you. I'll explain to them. I'm going to tell them that you had, previously asked, that you didn't see it coming. Just like you said, don't do this in the future. I said, sure. That was it. It blew over immediately over the course of one 7-minute phone call, because what happened there was I broke a pattern, right? He came in there expecting a fight, expecting resistance. You screwed up. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. I can prove it. I've got call logs. I've got time. I've got witness testimony, right? That's what he was expecting. But when I immediately said, you're absolutely right, I just put my hands up and said, shouldn't have done that. I messed up. It won't happen again, and I'm sorry. All of a sudden, he was reset. His pattern was broken. And that enabled him to go into, you know what, it wasn't so bad. So this is the power of breaking patterns. And what I want you to be thinking of whenever you're trying to move someone, right? There's ever been a time in your life where you're trying to get pissed and somebody continually makes you laugh, right? This is one I'm guilty of all the time. When people start to get angry at me, I start like cracking jokes, talking in silly voices, and it deflates their anger, because it's very, very hard to stay in one mode if people don't react in a prescribed way. For instance, Tony Robbins tells this story about one of his first seminars way back when he was a young guy. And he's giving the seminar, and it's in the middle of summer in this giant auditorium, and the air conditioning cuts, right? So you've got all these people crammed in here in this auditorium. The air conditioning is out, and they're like waiting. I think they have to wait for like an hour before they can even go. And they say, no, the air conditioning's out. We just got to roll. And then he gets them their workbooks, and the workbooks are screwed up, right? The pages haven't printed correctly. So he's up there trying to get started. And one guy raises his hand. He goes, this is ridiculous. I will not stand for this. It is too hot in here. I cannot be here. And Tony, how do you expect someone to react? Apologetically, perhaps, right? That's what you're expecting. Tony knows better. So he immediately decides to break his pattern. And he looks at him and he goes, you are absolutely right. This is ridiculous. I will not stand for this. And if you want to go right now, I insist you do. And the guy says, well, I don't want to go. He goes, no, this is wrong. People are not supporting you. They are not supporting me. This is completely wrong. But you know what? I'm going to continue this because this is important to everyone else here and myself. And if you can't do it, then I think that you need to go and get yourself a refund. The guy says, well, I think I'll stay. He says, no. You don't think you're going to stay. You either commit to being here and you make this a positive experience, or you go ahead and I will be more than happy to give you a refund because I want what is best for you. And the guy is just like completely blown away, right? He was expecting deference. But what he got was an aggressive tone of voice that was completely supporting him. That just scrambles your brain. That breaks the pattern. And what do you think the guy did? He sat down, didn't make a peep, and had a wonderful time there while he sweated his ass off. So breaking patterns, there's a number of ways to do it, right? Anything that goes against what people are expecting. So this can be tone of voice. This can be making them laugh. This can be speaking, high, low. I guess I already said tone of voice. It could be the way that you use your body, whether you walk away from them. You just want to scramble what they're expecting. And when you do that, you force them to reevaluate the situation with a new set of eyes. Also, a more influenceable set of eyes, if you will. Because when people are in that moment that guy was in, where they're just like this, right? They're just back in their seats. They're very suggestible. And so what Tony had right there was he had a person who he could suggest, like, listen, this is going to be good for you, blah, 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 is basically what he said to him. And the guy said, okay, it is, and then stuck with that. So breaking patterns, huge, 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 huge. One of the best ways to do it that I highly recommend is humor. So one of the things that I will often do when people start talking about subjects that are really heavy, and I can see that, yes, it's important that we connect over this, but also they're indulging a little bit too much, right? They are really soaking up their sad story. is crack a joke at that moment. And when you can make them laugh when they are in the throes of their sob story, you begin to rewrite the meaning of that story for them. And if you do it enough times, they won't be able to continue to go back into that sense of, my childhood was so hard and it didn't work and all that stuff. When you break the pattern as opposed to just commiserating, you get them to a much more resourceful state. So that is breaking a pattern in short. Go out and try it in your own life, right? Anything that you can do to get that look of like this on people's faces is going to be a good indication that you're doing it appropriately. I think that an example is going to be the most helpful way to talk about how you can. So this is one from when I was in Brazil, and I was out with a buddy one night, and we were friends, and he'd heard about what we did with our business, help people be more charismatic. He's like, oh, cool, whatever, interesting. Disinterested. And then we went out to a bar one night, and we just ran around like madmen, Ben and I. And we talked to everybody despite the fact that our Portuguese was terrible. Met a lot of people. We had people laughing. And I actually remember him that night just sort of standing back 6 feet away being like, what is going on here? And the night wrapped and it ended. And he called the next day, which was surprising because we weren't hanging out that often. And he said, listen, I want to do coaching. Like what I saw last night was awesome. And I can't do that. I want you to help me. So the first thing that we did is we just sat down and we talked because I want to understand what makes him tick. And so I started asking him questions. I said, all right, I'm going to go into coach mode now, but like, what is life about? Right? Describe how you were feeling last night. Tell me specifically what you were thinking when you were watching us. Tell me how you wanted to act but didn't. And as he got into it, he said, like, I want to be the guy that goes into a room and it's all eyes on him immediately. I want to have this, like, I want to have friends everywhere and be able to high five the maitre d' at any place. I want to cut the line at the club. I want to have the prettiest girl on my arm. And as I'm listening to this, I'm going, okay, like, yes, there's certainty in there, and yes, there's a girl, so love and connection. But really, what I'm hearing is significance, right? He wants to be the most special, unique, important person. Okay, so how does this play out for him? And I say, all right, so tell me about, like, last night. Like, you want all those things, but you weren't jumping into conversation. Like, what's going on in your head? And he said, I don't like to do that because if I feel like I try hard to speak to someone or get them to like me and they don't respond, that just makes me feel terrible. I'm going, okay, so he's got this sense of he wants to remain significant. And the way that he does that is by avoiding interactions with people that might make him feel not significant because they don't like him or because they reject him. And this is a very, very common pattern, by the way. So we go through it, and I have him sort of like, paint his ideal world. And, what would you like to do if you knew that they were going to respond to you positively? He says, I would have walked in, I would have high-fived everybody, I would have had a ton of fun. Eventually, like, the most beautiful girl in the room would have seen me. I would have walked right up to her and walked out with her on my arm. So, okay, so like I'm starting to get an understanding for his world. And if I just gone into it and said, all right, let's do that, man. Like you can do that. Like there's going to be a beautiful girlfriend at the end of the line for you. You can get all these things. It's going to work. That probably would have moved him because the first thing that I need to do is get leverage. Right? And what I mean by get leverage very specifically is take his core driving emotion and show him that his current pattern of action is blowing it, is screwing him from getting what he really wants because he hasn't figured that out yet. So what I have to show him very viscerally in his own language, in words that he used, is that he will not get this feeling of significance from hanging back and not speaking to people. So I say basically the following. I say, okay, like, makes total sense. I'm totally in. But let me ask you, like, how many people do you think notice the guy in the club who just stands there, sips his drink, and is too nervous to talk to anybody? And he goes, probably no one. I said, okay. And like, I mean, do you think that most people probably feel the same way? I mean, my guess is that most people show up to that club, hang out with their friends, sip their drinks, go home, and then talk about like, oh yeah, like that girl was such a bitch to me. Like, oh, I couldn't even talk to her. And he goes, oh yeah, and now he's saying, holy crap, I'm behaving like everybody else. I said, how significant would it be, for the guy who's like paying for bottles, right? Who is paying women to surround him and shoot bottles and have the fireworks going? Like, is that the type of person you want to be? I mean, I know you said successful businessman, but like, is that what you're looking for people to hang out with you because they like your money? And again, this isn't what he wants. He wants to be special. He doesn't want to be liked for his money. He's like, no, that's not it. That's not it. I said, okay, how ballsy is the guy who maybe doesn't have a bottle there, but walks in, does not care what anybody else thinks, and makes a beeline for the most beautiful girl as soon as he sees her. And whether it goes well or not, he's the only one in there that has the stones to do that. What do you think of that guy? And his eyes lit up, and he's like, that's the guy that I want to be. And the reason is because I'd started to break down. I was like, listen, what you're doing by trying to earn a lot of money or trying to be cooler than the other people or like not speak to anyone to avoid rejection, that is not getting you significance. And then what I showed him was, here is a direct path to get all the significance that you want. If I try to persuade him in other terms, in terms of like, you're going to get this wonderful girlfriend and she'll care about it, he wants these things for sure. But what is driving him in that moment is significance. So this is the most important thing. You first need to understand, and this comes from listening very closely to why they do the things they do. It's not just enough to know that a person wants to make money or that a person would like to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or they want to lose weight. That's not enough. Why do they want to lose the weight? Is it so that somebody will think well of them? Is it so that they can avoid heart disease? Those are going to indicate different needs, right? Heart disease, potentially certainty, right? Somebody thinking positive of them, significance. You need to be on the lookout for which needs drive them. Once you feel like you have a good handle on it, the next question is, all right, how can I show them that their current behavior of action or current plan of action is actually subverting the need that they want most? And then can I draw a direct path for them to get that need by behaving in a more empowering way that's going to be better for their future? That is step one. I do this all the time on my coaching calls. If you've ever had them, secrets out, right? This is what I'm doing. So this is the first thing to think about. I want to move now into something that is very, very effective. You can do this after, you can do this before, but it's called breaking patterns. And when you do this, people just cannot continue going down the same path that they're on. So it's really, really effective, and we'll touch on that next. So once you've figured out what drives people and you've gotten leverage, you've shown them that they're not getting what they want by doing what they're doing, that they could do it a different way. And at some point in there, you break a pattern, right? You crack a joke when they start to go into their most negative emotion. You're going to have them in a very open, susceptible state. And what you want to do at this point is tie everything together with a pretty little bow. I like to think of this as sort of the end game, because what you're just trying to do is put a pithy statement on what just come to realize, so that in that moment where they're having to make the decision of whether or not they're going to get upset, or in my friend's case, whether or not he was going to go buy a drink or go speak to someone at the bar or club, that they can go back to this little phrase, this little mantra, and it's going to remind them of what they need to do. So let's take the example of my friend that I spoke to in Brazil. We discussed, how is this guy who stands against the bar significant compared to the guy who goes up to the girl? And to break his pattern, while he was telling me the story of like, I didn't go up to her and like I couldn't stand it if she didn't like me. I'd be like, oh yeah, like that guy's that's really ballsy of him, right? And he goes, yeah, I guess so, right? So that's breaking a pattern and making him laugh. After all of this, what I'm trying to do is get to this pithy little sentence. So what I say is, look, man, your whole life, and I get it, man, you are an achiever, and you want to speak, these are words that he'd said to me before, and I'm sort of summarizing at this point. You are an achiever, right? You're someone who wants to be the best. You're someone who wants to not only walk into a room and have everyone look at you, but earn it. You don't want it because of money. You want it because of who you are. And he's like nodding, right? He's going with me at this point. So your issue now is not that you're like too nervous to talk to girls or you're too this. Honestly, it has nothing to do with nerves. Well, you've just gotten this mistaken belief that if somebody that you don't know doesn't immediately like you, that damages your sense of self. But really, your sense of self, if it's going to be strong, has to be independent of that. And the way that you prove that is by going out to the world and doing the things you want regardless of what somebody may or may not think. And he's still nodding. So that's sort of how I tie it together. And what I'm looking to do here is tie it back to his identity, right? Because if he sees himself as this achiever who isn't afraid, who does what he wants, and if I can make it clear that this action of, simply going out and being more outgoing in a social environment is going to make him more in line with his identity, and I can drive it and hammer it home, stick with him. There was another situation, another guy that we were coaching on something similar. And we'd gone through this whole exercise of sort of understanding what it did, and we sort of projected his life forward. Okay, say that you just keep doing the same things. You don't speak up in social environments. You don't do your best in work, not do your best, but you don't say your full piece in work because you're worried that it'll ruffle feathers. Where do you see yourself in a year from now? What would you give your life on a scale of 1 to 10? And he said 6. Okay, what do you see your life looking like in a year from now if you do speak up, right? If you do put your heart and soul into your work because you are more concerned with making the best product rather than not ruffling feathers. Like, where will your life be socially this? And he says a 10. And we say, okay, listen, your problem is that you just haven't realized that what you're doing is undercutting your life. You're looking at a 6 to a 10 on a daily basis just by the decisions that you make. And that mantra for him, 6 to 10, 6 to 10, 6 to 10, that became something that we could say to him at any moment and immediately trigger him to do the right thing. So what you're looking to do here is to frame this issue that they've had in a new way. So the first guy that I told you about from Brazil, he'd seen his issue as not wanting to be rejected. And we shifted that from, listen, it's not about not wanting to be rejected. It's about actually being the coolest guy in the room. And what does the coolest guy in the room do? He does not care. He talks to people because he wants to be affable, right? So you shift the focus from what it was on to something that's going to be more empowering and tie it back to their identity. Again, this is sort of a sequential thing. So just to touch very quickly on what it is. First, going through those 6 needs, understand which ones drive them. Second, what you're going to look for is how can you show them that they are subverting the need that they want, right? That they're not getting it by going in the direction they are. Really quickly, another example. My mom was here this weekend. She is a worrier. And for years, I tried to get her to stop, for years and years and years. And I would talk to her in terms of like, think of how it's holding you back. You could be doing all these cool things. And none of that affected her because that growth wasn't a big driver for her. Certainty was. So I'm aware of this time, and as I'm talking to her, I go, how do you think that affects your relationship with your kids, who I know are important to her because I'm one of them? And she says, oh, I don't know. I think it keeps them safe. I said, really, does it keep them safe, or does it make, my brother, your other son, like maybe not want to talk to you as much on the phone? And she goes, he doesn't want to talk to me? I said, and how does it, how do you think it affects your daughter, my sister, right? Do you think that she's taking this, and how is this going to affect her relationships when she's nervous all the time? I mean, we see she has it. She's stressed about little things. Is that good for her health? And she starts seeing, oh my God, my work damaging my relationship with my kids and potentially making one of them ill and sick in the long run. I'm exaggerating here because this really, this is not happening so concretely, but I'm trying to make worrying such a painful thing to her that she'll choose another option. So this is the important part. You can't just tell people, look how cool life will be, because if they don't care about growth, that's not going to move them. You've got to speak to the need that is working for them. And in my mom's case, I actually haven't seen her make as big of a shift as she did this last weekend when I spoke to certainty. And we'll see if it keeps up, honestly. We have got to go into the future to find that out. But step 1, identify the need. Step 2, get leverage on their driving need. Step 3 is going to be to break the pattern, right? So one thing with my mom when I was talking to her, whenever I would ask her, I'd be like, tell me about a time that you got really nervous. And she'd go, well, when you were in Brazil and you were there. I said, yeah, because everybody, all them white people dying in Brazil all the time, right? And she cracks, she smiles a little bit. Anything that you can do as they're entering the negative emotion, right? So if I were walking the guy in Brazil through that experience of like, so you walk into a club, how do you feel? Like I don't want her to like think of me and jump in. I'm like, oh yeah, that guy's super cool. Who's worried about what some 100-pound girl thinks of him before he's even spoken to her? Like anytime that you can get them to smile, cracking a joke can do, that's going to break the pattern, right? So that's the third part. And the fourth part is once you've gotten all those pieces together, tie it up in a bow, right? Explain to them that their issue was not, like my mom, worrying, keeping everybody safe. In fact, there's better ways to keep people safe, and worrying is damaging your relationship. So just letting things go is actually going to be better for everything that you want. When you can tie it up in a bow, tie it back to their identity. My mom's is a mother and a good mother. So if I could relate that to a better relationship with their kids, that's going to stick much better. That is a quick overview of the down and dirty ways to actually influence people based on who they are. Like I said, if you want any more of topics on this, Tony Robbins has like an 8-hour video that dives into this stuff, goes even further with lots more examples. Happy to reference that and give you guys a link to it. But this should be really, really good to go. And what I would say is, the next time that you're trying to talk to someone, persuade someone, right? Maybe you want them to leave their job and start a business. Maybe you'd like them to be more healthy. Start by asking questions, figuring out what their need is, figuring out what drives them, and then go through this process and see if you don't have more success. So that wraps the down and dirty version of leadership, persuasiveness, influence, call it whatever you want. If you're interested in this topic, this is one where it's very theoretical, right? It's very heady, but if you're continually interested in this, I'm happy to do more on it. If you're not, and there's other things, or there's just other things that you think you'd like to learn more about outside of this, let me know those as well. You can let me know in the comments, or you can email me, as always, with any questions at charlie@charismaoncommand.com. I prefer comments because everyone can see them, but completely your call. So that is it for the leadership video. Make sure to take this stuff out, right? Start speaking in AIDA. Start paying attention to your friends and create a little mental inventory. Okay, this moves this person, this moves this person. It's going to make everything in your life better. And the cool thing is, people aren't going to see you as the pushy, manipulative, influencing guy. They're going to see you as the person that really helps clarify their values and gets them moving on the right track. So it's awesome from that perspective. This has been Leadership. I'm Charlie, and of course, if you have any questions, contact me. That is it for today. Week 6, leadership, right? So the first part of this, any leadership, is understanding how to move and motivate yourself. So what I want you to do out sheet to help you identify the top 2 needs that actually drive the decisions that you make. So if you go down to the action resources, you click day 1, that is there for you. You just fill it out. It'll help you identify those. Just a note on this is also in the directions there, but when I ask questions about which of these things have influenced your decisions in the past couple years, it's really important that you think on actual decisions that you made. Not, oh wow, like love drives me and I'm totally based on this. But if you're making decisions, you know, between moving to the West Coast to be with your girlfriend or getting the promotion and you decide to stay, it's important that you recognize that financial security is really highly ranked. This is not what you would like to see yourself as, but what has actually driven behavior from you in the past. That's in the directions as well, but I really wanted to highlight it because there's such a temptation to pick the cool ones and give them high rankings. So that's it. Go ahead and click that sheet and you'll identify your top 2 needs that help motivate you to do the things that you do. And tomorrow we'll talk about how to figure out the same for other people. All right, day 2. This is the fun one. So yesterday All right, day 2. This is the fun one. So yesterday what we did was identify your top needs. And maybe this matched what you expected when you were going through the module. Maybe it surprised you. The point of today is to take the experience that you had yesterday and going through your own needs and asking yourself these kinds of questions and sort of looking for key words and apply that to someone else in your life. So think of someone else in your life that you have a close relationship with, and preferably someone that maybe you would like to persuade to do things a little bit differently. It doesn't have to be that you're fighting all the time, or it can be. It can be a boss that is just grinding you to the bone. I've had clients pick that. I've had people pick their significant others because they know what makes them tick and how to make that relationship go more smoothly. Or it can be a friend. It can be anything that you like. But pick a person in your life that you can know you're going to see today or can get on the phone with and contact. And the goal today is going to be to identify their top 2 needs. Now, you might already have a really good idea of this if you've gone through the module and you know them well. But it's still helpful to have this conversation. So if it's someone that maybe you have to call up, tell them that you want to do an experiment. Say, hey, or pretend it's, your mom or your brother or sister, right? What's up? Say, oh, I just got done this thing. It's on leadership, and I wanted to do an experiment to see some of the things that drive and motivate you. Do you have a couple of minutes? And everybody's interested in this stuff, so they'll say yes. Then when you go through it, what you want to do is use the same type of questions that you asked yourself yesterday. So what is life about? And then drive into why. If they say family, why? What does family give you? What does family make you feel? And then be on the lookout for those trigger words. And you can ask them, tell me about a big decision that you made and what motivated you. And they say, well, when I left my job a couple years ago, I was really concerned with getting to the same city that so-and-so was in. Or I was really concerned with moving up because I wanted to make a big impact and be important. And you go, oh, significance, right? So as you're listening to this, you don't have to tell it back immediately. But once you go through and you think you have a pretty good idea of their top 2 needs, what I want you to do is sort of summarize and parrot back, keeping in mind those 2 top needs that you've identified. So let's say that you're talking to someone and you've gone through And you've identified that their top needs are significance and growth, right? They're the type of person that wants to do big things, and they always like to push themselves to do more and more, but they like to be recognized for it. So you say, okay, so tell me if this makes sense. Like for you, and you can even use their own words, what motivates you in life is constantly evolving to be better. You love to learn new things and do new things. And so when you're making decisions, that's a huge aspect, but you also want to be recognized by people that you respect. You don't necessarily care about what the general population feels, but it's important to you that your close friends and your family and people that you think highly of really respect the decisions you make, and that drives a lot of what you do. If you are using the words that they're saying, you should get a resounding yes, and you'll know that these are their two needs. So that's just to help you identify what moves them. If you want, you can jump right into pattern breaking if you're trying to influence them, but what I'd like to do is save that for tomorrow. So that's it for today. Pick a person in your life. You can either call them up or you can sneak it into conversation. Just be like, hey, I wanted to ask you some random questions. Find their top two needs, parrot it back to them, and let us know in the forums how it goes. So day 3. So yesterday we picked that person, and if you want to, pick another person, but I recommend sticking with the same one for this because you've already got their needs identified. And today what we're going to try to do is find another way to meet their needs that is going to satisfy maybe one of the ways that you'd like to persuade them. And so let me give you a concrete example to drive this home. I was working with a client and we were talking. He's about to go into the finance world. And the truth of the finance world is a lot of people get into it who are significance driven. It's a highly respected industry. It pays a lot of money. You have to be really smart. The significance driven people tend to do it more than, say, nursing. Nursing tends to be more about giving back and love and connection, right? Just as an example, though it's not 100% of the people. And so one thing I know happens in finance is that you get these significance-driven bosses that work the new guy to the bone to show their superiors how important they are, and also to show the kid how important the work that they're doing is. Now, that isn't so great if you're the low man on the totem pole and you're in the office until 3 a.m. So if you know, for instance, that you have a significance-driven boss, or the person that you're working with that you picked yesterday is significance-driven, and you'd like them to behave differently, the question to ask yourself is, how can I meet the need that I identified yesterday in a different way? Right? So you've got this person, and I'm just going to continue with this example. Say that it's the boss. And okay, he gets significance, but he gets it by working people really hard. He gets it by looking good in front of the boss. How can I make him feel significant, special, and unique in a way that isn't going to work me to the bone and keep me here until 3 a.m.? And one of the answers that we came up with is you can thank and praise him for saying, you know what? I know that this week has been really, really hard on everybody. We've been trying to get this out, but I just wanted to let you know I really appreciated that you're like one of the few bosses who seems to care about the people beneath him having a life outside of the office. And it just means a lot to me that you like helped us with our work and we got out of here before midnight yesterday or whatever. You find anything small that he's doing, or the way that he seems to care, you praise him for it, and now you have given him a new route to be significant, unique, and special, right? He's the only one of the bosses that seems to care. So the next time where he's thinking about, should I work these guys to the bone, I guarantee you if he's significance driven and you've given him another method to get it, rather than just by like crunching you and working you so hard, he's going to take that, because his goal isn't necessarily work people to the bone. His goal is to feel significant. Needs are what drive people, not just the concrete ways that we meet them. So for the person you identified yesterday, if there is something, and hopefully you did pick someone where maybe they want to work on, maybe they're a little bit overweight and they're considering going to the gym, but they never actually do it. If you can identify what need, say for instance that person is certainty driven and they don't like going to the gym because it's uncomfortable, how can you find a way to meet that need for comfort or take that need away with the behavior that you're doing? So, for instance, the gym person, what you can do is talk about how in the future, they might not be able to do some of the activities that they love, say that they love hiking, if they don't take their health seriously. Or you can show them a new workout that is super comfortable because you get to watch TV while you jog on the treadmill. Find other ways to meet that need for them once you've identified their top 2 needs, and you can make them shift behavior, or rather help them, because the goal is not to run around like a maniacal mastermind telling everybody what to do. It's to help them do the things that are going to improve their life and their relationships and make them happier just by giving them different ways to meet the needs that are most important to them. So that's a big one. That's it for today. It can be complicated. If you're trying to think this out, go to the forums. This is what I do. I coach people, and a huge part based on what their needs are. So I have a lot of experience in identifying it and pulling leverage to help them make these changes. So feel free to write your quandary in the forums, and I'll be there to take a look. So day 4, as usual, when the week progresses, these things get a little bit harder to time. Because what I want to focus on today is breaking patterns. This skill is amazing. You can use it in conversation. You can use it anywhere. But if you can reliably break someone's pattern, you can change people's mood. You can change the way they feel about things. This happens all the time. What often happens is people, if they're sad, they get into a sad pattern where they're complaining about whatever's going on and nothing is fair. And what a lot of people do, because they're trying to help, is give them sympathy, and they give them the shoulder to cry on. They go, oh, it's so bad, it's tough. Now, that's appropriate maybe for a period of time, and maybe in events where things are bad, like there's a death in the family or something. Certainly, sympathy is completely appropriate. But if somebody is whining to the degree that it is not helpful and they're not moving past it, you can help them by breaking their pattern. Right? And so if you remember from the module, breaking the pattern just means doing something that momentarily does not allow them to maintain that focus, that physiology, right? So if they're sad and they're talking like this, and you can make them laugh, like, wow, life is so hard. I have to work at a $100,000 a year job, and they make me work 12 hours a day. No, right? I do this all the time when people complain about their jobs or things that they have going, because the truth is, if you can shift their focus to how silly it is that they're complaining about something that is in fact really good, you force them to laugh, and that breaks their pattern and makes it much harder for them to get back to that emotion. Now, the truth of the matter is, you might have to break a pattern 6, 7 times for it to just stop, right? Because if you do that once, they'll laugh and go, stop, no, I'm serious, this is bad, right? You might have to continually break it. For today, to try to keep it small, break one pattern. Will this necessarily result in a complete shift in mood and behavior? Not necessarily. Bonus points, though, for continuing to break patterns. So this can be when somebody's upset, and you can make them laugh. This can be when they're angry, and you can, if you want, there's a number of ways to do it. You can go right there with them, so they're angry, and you match their intensity, but you shift the content of what you're saying, right? So if you remember like the scene in Anchorman where they're just yelling, loud noises, right? That somebody is shouting. Now, this stuff takes in times, because some of the times you're going to go out, you're going to try to break someone's pattern, you're not going to succeed, and it's going to frustrate them more. That is okay, right? This happens from time to time. So think of someone in your life that maybe has a pattern that they go into, and brainstorm right now, what can you do that will break that pattern, right? If you can't come up with anything, and this is something that pops up in your day-to-day today, right? You weren't anticipating this pattern, still, do what you can to break it. And again, I realize this is moving away from tiny habits, but patterns you can't always predict when they show up. Sure, there are certain people that you might interact, like my dad. So if you come in and he always wants to start arguing. There are 100 ways, though, to break his pattern. If I go in and go, no, I disagree with you, right? And I make it so silly, that breaks his pattern. Or if I just go, Dad, shh, I agree, you're right. Let's not do it. That also breaks his pattern, because what he's looking for is a serious back and forth disagreement, argument, discussion, right? That's something that he enjoys doing. But you can break it in different ways. So maybe it's a person that you know it's coming, like if you have a dad like mine. Maybe it's with someone that you can't see it coming. The singular goal is to one time today, if it comes up, and I know that it might not, to break a pattern. All right. Week 6, day 5, this is it. And I actually don't want to focus specifically on anything from this week, because what I think is more valuable is an assessment. And this is just basically for you to reflect back on everything that you've done and ask yourself, 1, what were the biggest quick wins, right? What were the things that you did, you walked in, you smiled, or you lowered your tone of voice and raised your volume that immediately got the reaction, right? So those is one thing. 2, of those things or anything else, what has slipped, right? Maybe you started off week 1, 2, and 3 really strong, but as we moved into storytelling and presence and magnetism, you forgot to answer, how are you, fantastically, right? What do you want to bring back? And then third, what is something that you really see potential in that you weren't able to have the impact that you wanted to immediately, right? So maybe this pattern breaking, you haven't mastered it. Define these 6 weeks into just a couple of things that you need to focus on. Now, if you want, you can go through from the top, do it all over again, right? There's a lot of different stuff. But the 80-20 analysis of this is going to be to pick the handful of things that have made the most impact, that have fallen off, and that could make the most impact, and make those your day-to-days. So once you've identified them, same thing. One day at a time, set your trigger. Maybe you take an entire week and you just focus on eye contact, right? Because you're like, that one is huge for me. Or maybe you take a couple days and you focus on volume until you feel like it's become more ingrained of a habit. That's what I want you to focus on today, the assessment. For sure, share this in the forum. Helps with accountability and helps me know what few things are helping you to make the biggest breakthroughs. So that is it for the action guide. You can, of course, start over at the beginning. You can, of course, take any one of these and just pick the days that are helpful. That doesn't mean that you're done. I've been working on Charisma for years and years. It is more than a 6-week process. But these are the building blocks. This is really what you need to know to do fantastically in any situation. So I hope you found this valuable. Of course, you can reach out to me in the forums. You can hit me up via email, but we're still here to support you. So that's it for now, and I guess I'll see you in the forums.